Hey, so we are going to do a few different watercolor techniques that will come in handy when you are doing watercolor painting. In the end, I just want to show you the end result. It's going to look like this. So keep that in mind when you're doing the painting techniques, is that they're pretty small. They're about maybe like, I know everyone's hand is a different size, but for me, it's a square about the size of the last joint of my thumb. Okay? It's 1, 2, 3 across, 1, 2, 3 across, and then a skinny one on the bottom. Okay, on this piece of watercolor paper, this cold pressed paper, I am going to start off by writing watercolor technique so that I know when I'm looking at this what I am looking at. Watercolor techniques. I'm going to underline that. Okay, now the first watercolor technique I'm going to do today is going to be over here, and it is called wet on wet. This is actually a technique that can be frustrating for people. It's kind of what we accidentally do. Like, we don't mean to do wet on wet, and I think when people accidentally do wet on wet, it's very frustrating because things happen that they don't intend to happen. So I'm going to show you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my brush is clean, because working in a classroom, I don't know if the last person who used this brush did a good job of cleaning it. So I'm going to swish, 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 scrape, scrape, ooh, scrape, swish, 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 scrape, scrape, and about 4 X's. Okay, now I'm going to get some clean water for wet on wet. I never want to make a puddle on my paper. I just want there to be enough water that it's shiny, not so it's drippy. So about the length of my words wet on wet, I'm going to draw using clean paint, clean water, a shiny little square. It's not dripping. If I pick it up and move it, I don't have water dripping all over the place. Okay? Now, I'm going to activate 2 different colors. I'm going to do purple by putting a drop of water in purple, and I'm going to do a drop of water in red. Now I'm going to come back to my purple, clean my brush, and I'm going to get my activated purple paint by just dipping my toe into the color. And here, where it is shiny, I'm going to make kind of like a slanty triangle. You can see those little explosions of color right away. I'm going to quickly clean my brush, go back and get that activated red, and do the other side of my square. And I am going to go up into the purple. And you're going to see it doesn't make a very straight line there. Now, if that's what you're intending, it can be very pretty to see that kind of bleed into each other, the colors. But if you're not intentionally doing that, that is what causes a lot of frustration, where you're drawing, maybe you've painted a beautiful blue sky and you want to put maybe a tree in front of it. If you don't wait for that paint, the sky, to dry, when you try painting your tree in front of it, you're gonna get that explosion. So instead of neat lines, you get this like bleeding, uh, you know, movement of colors, okay? What you would want to do is wet on dry in that case. So we're gonna start wet on dry, the first part, and then we have to allow our paint to dry. Let's label wet on dry. Now, I'm gonna use the same colors so that I can definitely see the difference. I'm going to pick up some of that activated purple, and now I'm painting with wet paint onto my dry paper. And I'm just painting that sideways triangle, kind of a slanty triangle. Okay, now I have to let that dry before I can add the second color because I'm doing wet on dry, right? So if I were to paint into this where my next color is touching that wet paint, I would be getting that wet on wet technique, which I don't want. So I'm gonna let that dry, box that off, and start while I'm waiting for that to dry. I'm gonna do my next technique, which is graded wash. Graded means you're going like a gradient. You're going from either one color gradually into another color, or maybe dark gradually to light, or vibrant gradually to pale, I guess. So let's clean our brush. I'm gonna pick a new color to work with this time. I'm gonna activate my green because that's what I want to work with on this. You can pick a different color if you like. It's better for it to be something a little vibrant, something kind of not too light. You know, yellow is pretty light and we don't want that. So I'm gonna work with green. I'm using this is really kind of a wet on dry technique. So I'm going to get green paint on the toe of my bristles, and I'm gonna start off by going back and forth in one spot a few times to get it very vibrant. And then I'm just gonna start going back and forth and working my way down. I'm not picking my brush up. It's staying on the paper the whole way. And what you will see as we move down is what? Starting to look paler and paler, and that is graded wash. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush. My wet on dry is still not ready to go yet. I'm gonna box this off and do another technique while I'm waiting for this to dry. This one's pretty fun. Underneath the wet on wet, I'm gonna do a technique called blotting. And this is really good for making skies, and you'll see why in just a minute. I think I'm gonna do blue for this so that you can really see why I'm saying this is good for skies. I'm gonna clean my brush, activate my blue with a drop of water. Doesn't take much because I'm just working in a very small area here, right? It's like basically 1 inch by 1 inch. Okay, I've cleaned my brush, so I lay it flat. For blotting, I'm going to use a little piece of paper towel, and I'm gonna scrunch it up. Okay, now I've activated my blue. I'm going to dip my toe in there, and I'm doing wet on dry technique again. And I'm going to do a square about the same size as the one I did above. See how I did that? I painted the square and then I'm pulling that paint across. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna clean my brush, and while it is still wet, I have to move kind of quickly, right? I don't want it to dry. I'm gonna take that bunched up paper towel and I'm going to just kind of tap it. And you can see it has lifted up the color. Now, I could take more of it by blotting up some more, but you have to make sure that you're doing it while the paint is still wet. Otherwise, it's not really gonna do anything. When I'm done with that, I'm gonna box it off and do another technique. This one is called resist. This one's pretty fun. Resist means to say no to someone or something, or to push it away. And so that is what we're gonna do with a white crayon. The white crayon is going to say no to our paint. It's gonna push it away from the paper so that it does not absorb into the paper. That's because this is kind of oily or waxy, and the paint will not adhere to that, or water will not. So I'm gonna take this, and for this I'm just gonna do something very simple, very basic, and I wanna do a couple layers. Now you can't see what I'm doing because it's white on white. White on white, it's not gonna show. Just like if I had black paper and I was drawing on that with a black crayon, that would not show, or a red paper and a red crayon, it's not gonna show because it's the same color. Okay, so now I've already had my purple activated, so I'm gonna go ahead and use that. I'm gonna clean my brush, I'm gonna dip my toe into that purple, and I'm gonna go back and forth and back and forth. Okay, I'm glad this is happening. There are parts that are not showing up so well, probably because I have too much paint on my paintbrush. I'm gonna clean off my brush. I'm gonna scrape it off. I'm gonna dry 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm gonna go back and just kind of run this clean brush over where I put my crayon. And then I'll just wipe off the stuff that's sitting on top of the crayon. Okay, so you can see the white crayon has stopped the paint from adhering to that part of the paper. I'm going to box this off. Now remember, you can pause this whenever you need to. You can rewind and watch parts over again. That is just fine. We have two more different techniques, two more techniques. One of them is going to be here, and then the other one is going to go across here. So here is our next technique, which is salt. I like to do this with black or purple. It looks pretty cool with a dark color. I think I'm going to show you how it looks with black. Now, you may not even get to see how it looks if this doesn't dry on time. So I'm going to clean my brush, scrape it off on the side. I'm going to activate my black with a drop of water. Again, just using a little bit, so I don't really need very much water for that at all. Okay, now what I want to do is a square of paint that's about the same size as this. Dip my toe into that black. Oh, before I begin this, oh, I'm glad I stopped. Okay, watch. So obviously salt. I'm going to be using salt, and I have salt in this container. Now, I only want to use a little bit. I don't want to go crazy with it. A lot of kids like to dig in here and get like, let me show you how much I have. They're like, it's just a pinch. It ends up being this much, and that is way too much. You don't want that, especially for this, which we're just using a tiny little, 1-inch square area. What you want is, basically if you put your finger in there and press down, you're gonna pick up like this much. Again, I'll show you. I'm pushing down and I get that much. That should do it for this little area. If your fingers are dry, usually you can't get that. So just pinch a tiny bit. I mean, even that is probably too much. So scrape some of that off. You just want about that much, okay? I just want you to see that. Okay, so now I'm gonna wet my brush. Let me try this again. Wet my brush, pick up some of that activated black paint. I don't want a ton of it. Remember, watercolor is pretty translucent. You should be able to see it. I'm gonna get just a touch more black. While this is wet, I'm going to get my salt. Remember, just a little bit. And I'm gonna sprinkle it in here. And I'm just gonna leave that there, okay? Now, by this time, because we're working in such a small area, my wet on dry is dry and ready for the next step. I'm gonna clean my brush. I'm gonna come over here to my red because I want it to be the same colors that I did for wet on wet so that I can really see the difference. And I'm going to paint onto that dry paper. You can see it's a lot more vibrant when we do wet on dry. And when I do that, I still have that nice sharp edge. That's because when I paint up to this dry paint, it doesn't really, bleed into the next color. It stays put for the most part, right? So it's a totally different look from wet on wet. I'm gonna clean my brush. And, ooh, my salt is already starting to work. I'm gonna do my last technique. I'm gonna box this off. And the last one that I'm gonna do is blending colors. Okay, so let's put some yellow on here. I haven't used any yellow. I'm gonna activate my yellow just with a little touch. I think I'll do yellow and red. So what I'm gonna do is start off with a wet on dry over here and a wet on dry over here. I'm gonna push this, this is gonna be a bar that goes about to here. I'm gonna push this color until I'm into the first color and then just kind of go back and forth so that the colors blend. Now, you're gonna see my two original colors. Blending colors doesn't mean I have this original color and this original color and this. The blending is happening here in the middle. I just want you to see that we have two colors combining to make that one. Okay, so now I've activated my yellow. Hopefully I can get enough of this. Here we go. Okay, I'm pushing this across. Again, This, I want to work quickly so that it does not dry. I need a little bit more water. I don't want it to dry before I get to blend it. So I'm pushing, you can see, past the middle. I'm going to clean my brush, pick up some red, start over here. And again, I'm only doing this so that we can see what two colors we've used to blend. So when we look back at this, we'll remember, oh yeah, this wasn't just one color paint. I made that color. And I'm going back, now that I'm here, I'm gonna go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I don't wanna go crazy because I don't wanna rip up the top layer of paper, but now you can see the difference between this and the middle and this and the middle. Hopefully it ends up looking orange. It's gonna change a little bit as it dries. Okay, now I have done all of them and I hope you have too. You can go back and rewind if you need to. But we can see the difference between wet on wet and wet on dry, right? We can see graded wash probably very likely got even a little bit lighter as it dried. Blotting is where we're lifting paint off of the paper. Resist is where we're not allowing the paint even to get onto the paper because we used something to block it. Here's how my salt is looking now. Looks pretty good, I like that. We can use that for creating texture in our work or making galaxy. A lot of people use this for galaxies. The kids, my students often get excited and say, oh, it's the galaxy. So there's that. And then we've got our blending colors. And this is really, really good for like everything in watercolor. You can use it for adding shading to things. You can use it to make colors that you have run out of or that you don't have to begin with. And now you have these 7 different watercolor techniques.